Hi people, just some updates around these brackets that have been marketed with the claims that it makes porta potties compliant with the self-contained motor vehicle regulations, which it doesn't. Now, from the outset today, I want to make one thing really clear because there seems to be a bit of confusion. The slide brackets that have been marketed by Myst Enterprises are actually compliant with self-contained motor vehicle regulations on the condition they are fitted to a compliant toilet, not to a porta potty. Now you'll be aware this week that there's been considerable discussions around MBIE and Plumbers, Gas Fitters and Drain Layers Board haven't actually made a determination around whether these brackets comply with the technical regulations of the self-contained motor vehicles regulations. They don't. That has been the word that we have received from our alliances within the Plumbers, Gas Fitters, Drain Layers Board Advisory Committee, and also that's been surprised by one of our contacts at MBIE. Now, that decision is subject to peer review. I understand at the moment is that peer review is being carried out by Crown Law, because any decision that comes from MBIE, bar Plumbers, Gas Fitters, Drain Layers Board, has to be in alignment with the intent of the legislation. Now, the legislation is, when it comes to porta potties, is actually quite clear. The first issue is that the base is not permitted to be removed in order to dispose of human waste. Of course, porta potties, the base is the holding tank. It is only porta potties that have the base as a holding tank. In the likes of a cassette toilet, the cassette slides out of the base in order to empty human waste. So that is actually compliant. Porta potties are not. The second issue is that the regulations actually prohibit the modification of a toilet. Okay? Adding an aftermarket bracket to a porta potty is modifying it. End of story. The next issue requires the amendments that were made in August 29th around venting, and I'm not going to go into that, but specifically there was actually some alterations made to the regulations that said that toilets must be installed as designed and specified. Now that design and specification is made by the manufacturer of the toilet, not by the suppliers of some aftermarket bracket. The absurdity of those that are marketing the brackets is I mean, they're really taking the piss, or the mickey if you like. At some stage we've seen things like the toilet bowl. Actually they've redefined that as being the base. So the toilet bowl on a porta potty's the base. Now that's one description which the marketers of the bracket have changed, not the manufacturer of the toilet. Only the manufacturer can make such declarations or changes. In another case, and one that was quite heavily publicised on YouTube particularly, was that the bracket, the aftermarket bracket, becomes the base. Again, the manufacturers and promoters of aftermarket brackets can simply not make that declaration. Only the manufacturer of the toilet could. And frankly, even if the manufacturer of the toilet was to turn around and declare that the holding tank Well, they can't even do it. They can't even declare that the holding tank isn't the base, because the holding tank is. It's exactly what it sits on, is the base. You know, and let's be very, very clear about this. There is no leeway in the requirements of the toilet in the self-contained motor vehicle legislation or regulations. There is no leeway whatsoever. The requirements for the toilet are prefixed with the word must. Must. Must means that those requirements are mandatory. They are not open to interpretation, and they are not open to be changed at will by anybody. There is no way, regardless of what anybody ever does, that a porta potty will ever be compliant under the self-contained motor vehicle regulations. No way at all. The regulations, and actually think about this in conjunction with reading the regulations. The regulations specifically prohibit the removal of the base in order to empty human waste. Now, what toilets do you know, other than a porta potty, where the base is actually the holding tank? Be clear, the whole regulations have been written in order to prohibit the use of porta potties while freedom camping in an RV. There's no doubt about that. Nash's bill was presented on the whole grounds that porta potties were not being used in RVs, based on a number of assumptions by a group that's supposed to represent the interests of freedom campers, but in reality doesn't. The situation's bizarre. Now, going back to this peer review, the peer review by Crown Law is also going to have to decide if or how, why, what they handle the situation going forward. There has been an estimated 1,200 porta potty brackets sold under the claims that they make the porta potty compliant. So it's quite a good number. That's not the fault of the owners of RVs. It is the fault of the cowboys who A, have inspected and approved those installations for a green certificate, and B, the issuing authorities who have actually allowed it to happen. Now, particularly in regards to the issuing authorities, they are potentially facing huge fines and also legal liability, because not only are they liable for the cost of the bracket that was bought under false pretenses, they are also liable for the complete total costs of putting it right. And that includes all the shipping costs of the porta potties, the cost of certifications, everything, absolutely everything. And whatever it's going to cost to put the vehicle right, so it does in actual fact comply with the regulations. Right, so literally each case of a non-compliant certificate being issued because of a porta potty bracket is likely to cost the issuing authorities thousands of dollars. That's each and every single case. The promoters of the bracket, for example, have often gone out and actually said that these brackets have actually been approved by the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drain Layers Board. That is actually a very big misrepresentation. Plumbers and Gasfitters Board has been very clear that they cannot alone make that decision. And because of all the complaints that have been made to MBIE and to Minister Doshi as Tourism Minister about these brackets, the Plumbers and Gasfitters and Drain Layers Board and MBIE have made a decision. And that decision is being peer reviewed now by Crown Law. It's not the fault of the people who got scammed. You know, there's no way that these people are actually in any way responsible. It comes back to the inspectors and the issuing authorities. we're disappointed as a group, and I know many people, when these brackets first came on market, questioned their compliance, or their claims that they make porta potties compliance with the Plumbers, Gas Fitters and Drain Layers Board, and also with the MBIE. And we're actually disgusted that it's taken over 4 months for MBIE and the Plumbers and Gas Fitters Board to actually seriously look at the situation. Because like I said, there's potentially over 200 people who've been scammed over these brackets. And that's what it is, it's a scam. Freedom campers have been subject to scams for years now, and quite honestly, we're sick of it, absolutely sick of it. It's like the finger of blame being pointed at us all the time. Ooh, you know, we're sick of it. Show us some bloody evidence, you know. Stop listening to the promoters of certified self-containment and their assumptions and their hearsay, you know, or claims that they've got evidence that nobody else has ever got, you know, and they won't produce it. Forget it, you know, crazy stuff. End of the day, these people who are creating cheats to get around the legislation, and that's what they are, they're taking cheats, they're taking the mickey, they're taking the piss in doing so. Instead of creating these cheats around the legislation, what these people should be doing is actually opposing the whole legislation. Don't comply with it. Because in that way it fails, and National conceded it has failed, and they will repeal it. They have promised to repeal it. Lately they've promised to repeal it if in fact it doesn't succeed. Don't comply with it, don't bend over and take it. Ignore it. Make your opposition to the opposition to the legislation and the technical regulations, make it very clear, because the problem is not the vehicles or the modes of camping. It's the people. It's the people. It's the people. It's the people.